What's up? What's up? What's happening? So, I want to start this video off saying hello, prosperous rise this early morning today. Topic of the day today, simps. I was watching some videos earlier when I woke up today, and honestly, I thought this was a great time to give my viewpoint on this because, you know, younger generation, I know how to blend in between a lot of generations when it comes to conversations and actually take part in them and whatnot. Honestly, simps are a plague upon this nation. However, when I say this nation, I mean this nation of human species. However, with that said, oh, and quick disclaimer: the air is going to cut on eventually, so I'm gonna try to increase my volume, but it's still early. I don't want to wake up people in the house. Uh, Honestly, I don't like simps at all. However, I understand they're a necessity upon the planet. I was watching the Anton Daniels show. Shout out to Anton. I agree with him on a lot of things. A lot of other things I disagree with him with, but it's usually on the metaphysical aspect of things, and that becomes a lot more nuanced. But that's why it's metaphysical. Uh, but I agree with him. Simps are an abomination. If you ask me, a simpleton is the equivalent to a sucker. You're not good at all. Why are you trying to get on another man's action? Why are you trying to tear down another man? But we also got to understand where a lot of this is coming in from. A lot of this simp behavior was enabled in the corporate workspace. Why? Because a lot of these corporate dudes, they're not stupid. They understood these women are spending a lot more time with me. I'm going to be the work husband. They were okay with that back then. There wasn't as many cameras. So a lot of cheating was going on. We ain't going to sit here and act like elder generations wasn't getting it on. They knew what they was doing. However, we also know too that we are transitioning from the Piscean age into the age of Aquarius. And we use these zodiac ages to, just give ourselves a point of reference for how we're identifying the time in which we are explaining the behaviors of the energies around us that we cannot see with the naked eye. And I know that gets a lot of people tripped up, but I try to keep it simple for you to say, to understand these energies, think of the wind. You cannot see the wind until it acts on something tangible. Your pressure sensors on your body, your temperature sensors on your body. When you see the wind blowing in the trees or it's kicking up dirt and dust and debris, that's when you know the wind is there. So with that said, I don't agree with it. As a man, you should have big discipline, you should have patience, a lot of integrity. But these are things that are cultivated. I also understand we live in a world where these things aren't practiced and or taught. You have to be trained to have these things. And we aren't training. When I say we, I mean we as a culture. I'm outside of it. My father did his job to make sure that I was stand out, and I am stand out. And I appreciate that wholeheartedly. But Anton, he was referring to the LeBron James and DJ Academic situation that's going on right now, when Drake, I guess, is exposing LeBron James, saying how he was setting up situations and Academics is, almost instigating it and whatnot. And I agree with Anton Daniels. What affects one man ultimately and inevitably affects another man. But we also got to understand the time that we're in. We're in a time now where a lot of things that was done in the dark has to come to the light. And for a lot of things that were done in the dark to come to the light, you need almost those grimy, gritty representations to pull out those negative beings into the light, or those negative behaviors or negative truths into the light. So what do I mean by that? Take, for example, and I'm going to give you a real life example, right? The U.S. government will try to capture a drug dealer, right? But what do? They send somebody on the inside, and usually they tell them too, we're not going to do the petty crime stuff. Let them get away with petty crime. Sometimes they even may let them get away with certain murders because they want to capture them doing something else, and they want to get other people involved in this, that, and the third. The government will tell their employees or our public representatives to let certain things slide for to get bigger fish and things of that nature. The person doing those things have to be willing to let certain things slide, and that's them operating in a negative nature. That is the physical being expressed, or that is the non-physical being expressed in the physical. There we go. So, with that said, with these simps, and it comes to men and simps, you need these simps so you can identify who the real men are. Just because you got money doesn't make you a man. Just because you got famous and notoriety doesn't make you a man. Just because you got women doesn't make you a man. Honestly, it's very hard to define a man. And from what I know, and from how I live my life, is patience. Not abusing your power. Standing up when you can. Yeah. Having courage. Speaking up when it's unpopular. Saying the truth even though everybody's is living the lie. You know. Being a warrior in a garden and not a garden in a warrior. So that's what makes a man, ultimately, from what I see. And there's also other nuances into it. You know, being accountable, not just holding others accountable, but saying, hey, I've done wrong and I'm willing to take my punishment wholeheartedly. So, you know, Consultant Freeman, I don't agree with simps. However, I also understand too, how can you clean up the world if you don't have the people willing to get dirty and pick up the trash? I think that's a little bit better of a reference. Shoot, I used to scrub toilets myself. You know, just consider the trash man. Oh, I got soap in my eye. You know, so you gotta have these things in the world, sad to say, and I don't agree with them. I do not condone simp behavior. But I also understand this is a world where simps were already here long before I was born. And this is a necessary evil to clean up certain things. How can these women identify a real man from a simp in the first place? You know, if we don't have the simps to expose the simps, right? It's like, what's the number one enemy to a parasite is a parasite. You know, it's ultimately themselves. So, and what's the number one enemy to the human race? Ourselves. And I get it. I truly, truly get it. This shouldn't be done at all. However, this is the world most of us were given. A lot of us wasn't around when a lot of this stuff was going on. We were born into a world where, you know, this stuff was already in play. And you know, the world is changing at a very, very fast rate. But this is why it's also important to listen to our elders too, and to have respect for our elders. A lot of their advice now is outdated because the world has changed so much. But there's still wisdom and gems that can be applied that we can pass on. You know, like again, having love for your elders. Because at a certain point, your elder ends up becoming a walking primary source if they're honest. You know, they could tell you certain things that took place. They could tell you certain things that took place that wasn't put into the history books, but people know to be true, or was lied about and the information was changed and skewered and whatnot. Right? Like, okay, for example, I'm Native American. I've met my great grandmothers. Both of them made it clear, nah, son, we ain't black. We may look black. That's because our genes have been here long, long, long before other gene expressions. And I mean, these are people that were born in the 20s and in the 30s that knew this stuff already. And they understood genes and whatnot. You know, they understood certain genomes was there when you listen to your ancestors. Gosh, I'm so grateful to have met my great grandmothers. Nah, we weren't slaves. We might have had members in the bloodline that were slaves, but the ultimate bloodline of ours weren't slaves. We were already here. Some of us was put into slavery, and in slavery, how people define it, isn't even the actual definition. When people say indentured servitude, that was practically what it was. But you know, you give certain people a title of slave, certain people a title of indentured servitude. Game of politics. So yeah, I mean, I don't want to go too long and too far into this. I want to stay on topic. You know, as men, we got to do better. You know? Oh, and also one of the other things too is also understanding as a man that you are the physical builder of this world. So when you find yourself putting too much value in materialistic gains, materialistic practices, and whatnot, you're losing your way as a man. Why? Because you're supposed to be the master of your nature. This third dimensional realm is a physical realm where we can bring our imagination, our nation of images, into reality, a third dimensional reality. And if you're falling in love with these things, you aren't doing what you're supposed to do as a man. So when do you see that? Usually you see that with people who aren't taught to, you know, go out and build fires, build their own shacks. I get it. A lot of us lived in a time where we were told just go to school. We weren't taught to, you know, build and work on our own cars and, you know, hunt for our own food and how to tie a fisherman's knot, how to tie a cleat knot and whatnot. The difference between a socket wrench and a wrench. And I also agree. An aspect of men, you shouldn't be caring too much about what women say. Now, it's not to say you don't take into consideration what women say. I like to live off the principle. I get it. My roots are almost Christian, Catholic to a degree. However, I try to be more spiritualistic in practice. It's a lot. The boundaries are a lot looser, but the consequences are more severe. And within these spiritual practices, I'll skip the steps. You know, there are certain principles of life. So I like the principle that your woman is your rib. And in certain contexts, this is how the rib operates. Your rib is to grow with you, and it protects you. However, if your rib is left too far exposed, your rib can be used as a weapon, right? So that means it gets torn out of you. And if you're still alive, it becomes a very dangerous weapon because certain ribs have points on them. Or if they're acted upon in a gruesome manner and it does damage on the inside of you, that means something acted on it and it did collateral damage to you. And I guess the metaphysical and metaphorical representation of that is how we seen in the quote unquote black communities how the welfare system got into play. But that was, you know, a kamikaze move now that we see, because it's affecting people of all races. You know. But yeah, consultant Freeman Services. Tap in with me on YouTube, Instagram at v.o.m.experience. This was fun.